Anti-Afro Svengalis, I'm bringing to you a child support head scratcher, and this is an alert. Consider massaging your head if you're inclined to scratch your head, because if you scratch your head, you just might end up bald on this one. Let me put the disclaimer out here. This video is not designed to shame any person who has issues with paying their child support or anyone who feels they need to apply for public assistance because they need it. This is a unique situation which draws upon what I have stated so many times before. Whenever you hear this outrageous, over the top, going off, screaming and hollering, all of these names being called, and those who are targeted know it doesn't apply to them. I mean, it's so outrageous. Trying to permeate, got to make sure I say whatever I need to say to get this person to stand up and listen. And more specifically, they want an immediate reaction. I will continue to maintain the vast majority of these instances include those who are actually speaking about themselves, whether it's their current situation or their upbringing. And I hone in on the name calling. The name calling is just completely not even in sync with who they're actually targeting. And it doesn't even sound like they're really speaking about the person that they claim to target most of the time. And they'll come up with any scenario they can think of. However, I don't think it's an accident. I think they're coming up with any scenario that applies to them or applied to them as they were coming up. I think the ridicule, the verbal abuse, the screaming, just the going off on a moment's notice, all of those are habits that have been acquired over time because they've been modeled for the subject who is displaying the behavior. And sometimes they're not able to yell. They're trying to yell, but they can't. Making all these empty threats. Because earlier in life, when you have an older person making threats, the younger person is always going to believe it. So that's an imprint. So this behavior is just simply carried into adulthood. And here we see it on these YouTube streets. But what does this have to do with child support? This applies specifically to Grownmold, known as Eric B., and Fingernails on the Chalkboard, April B. as well. But they have two different last names. You don't have to scratch your head on that one. There's a lot of people who are married and they have different names. But this is a little different situation going on here. More specifically, these two, Grownmold and Fingernails on the Chalkboard, that's basically all they do is try to figure out how badly they can try to make someone else feel, which in turn means they're feeling the same way. I am applying this to the situation about child support because it's bizarre that Grownmold would be in a child support case that was filed by who? By Fingernails on the Chalkboard? Does that make any sense to you? Husband and wife living together. However, the wife files a child support case on the husband. And even more profoundly sad is paternity is acknowledged 3 years after the birth. You see it here. There are 28 entries. The case was filed. And 3 years later, there's an acknowledgement of paternity. Grownmold runs around talking about how horrible all these fathers are out here. That they're deadbeats. That they're bums. That they're going nowhere. Their life is in ruins. And Fingernails on the Chalkboard is agreeing and takes it even further by declaring that you all are jealous of Grownmold. Even without this revelation, we all know what they're professing is actually a turnaround onto themselves. Trying so hard to denigrate them. Number one, because this is how they were dealt with. And incredibly resentful about others who are just basically taking care of business with themselves and their families. You can't be taking care of business with self and family if your own supposed wife has to put you on child support. It just doesn't seem believable, which a lot of people never believed to begin with, that these two were married. How in the world can a husband and wife be living together and there's a child support case filed? That, people, is just bizarre on the surface. But if you really think about it, it fits with Fingernails on the Chalkboard and her retaliatory, vindictive nature. No doubt this case was filed, and I don't want to say exclusively, but I'm sure it was filed out of vindictiveness because we know Grownmold has all these side chicks and side babies. Fingernails on the Chalkboard herself was on Smoke's live stream and said, well, if you want to say he had babies on me, he had babies on me. That came out of her mouth. Yes, you would absolutely need to have the support in order to raise a child. But there are more motivators behind that. Let me make a correction here. I said side baby a second ago. And I'm not devaluing any children that are produced out of a marriage. That's not the point. The point is the effort to pull off this lie that they were married. So it wouldn't be considered side baby. It would just be another baby mama if a baby was born after they supposedly got together. And Pennsylvania doesn't even honor common law marriages anymore. But even so, prior to them outlawing common law marriages in 2005, if the so-called husband, common law, is not even on the leases, how can there be a case for common law? Living together incognito is very different from living together and genuinely sharing, because you'd be on documents such as checking accounts and savings accounts. Not that people can't have separate accounts, leases, rental agreements, car notes, insurance policies. But if they're not even telling child support or the welfare department that the baby daddy's living there, come on. How can it be considered common law if it's not actual marriage? It isn't, people. So let me go back to how it's predictable and understandable how Fingernails on the Chalkboard make those statements about if he had babies on me, he had babies on me, because she aims to humiliate and punish Grownmold right here on the world stage. I mean, what woman would come onto the international airwaves and make that statement other than to humiliate the baby daddy, or if you want to say husband for the sake of conversation, go ahead and say husband. Either way it goes. What is the purpose of making that statement? And Fingernails on the Chalkboard has made other statements trying to embarrass and humiliate Grownmold. On a live stream, she jumped up and said that he calls her a white girl. Hi, I'm light-skinned sister, but ain't no one ever called me a white girl. And he was embarrassed. So she has the same type of proclivities towards Grownmold. And although he absolutely needs to be paying for the child he helped produce, that's a given. I think there were additional motivators behind filing that case of child support against Grownmold. But I also have to clarify, there are different ways that child support cases can come about as into the legal system. And I don't want to insult anyone, but I'm going to give this descriptor just to clarify matters. The parents, first off, can decide we're going to do this ourselves, and a great number of parents do that, although they're not living together. You'll have one parent, again, I'm not pointing out the father more so than the mother, because it happens. both ways. They come to an agreement, and the one parent who is not having the primary physical care, I'm not saying legal because it's 50-50, unless the court says otherwise. The children are primarily living with the one parent, and the other parent does what the parent does and contributes health care, dental care, school supplies, clothes, food, that sort of thing, rent. They're collaborating and there's no need. Neither of them feel court needs to be involved. Then you have a situation where a parent feels, I just want to make sure this is solidified and legal. So they'll file a child support case without any issue involving social services. They just file the case and the court institutes orders. Then you have a situation where a parent says, I need help, I can't do it on my own, and I'm not getting the support from the other parent. The parent goes down, the one parent goes down to social services / the welfare office and says, I need help. And there's no shame in asking for help. I'm just describing the process. You're going to ask the identity of the other parent. And you really think it went down like this? Oh, we live together. You really believe that? I don't believe that. We pretty much got proof of that because Grownmold didn't appear anywhere on those rental agreements. Hats off to the parents who are working out their issues and not living together. And look at this situation. They can't even work out the child support issues and they're living under the same roof. They're not going to hold up your support that they would give you from the state / county, but they are going to require that you file a child support case. They want you to pursue child support so the county can be reimbursed for the money that they are given the one parent. And of course, they aim to not have to pay as much. But as we see, the instability and unreliability of one parent puts a strain on all systems. And the taxpayers have to always end up picking up the slack. But the home run hypocrisy is running around these YouTube streets and labeling everybody else bums and deadbeats. That just cycles back to what I said earlier. These criticisms of others are actually criticisms of self, because it wouldn't even apply to those that they're talking about in most instances, like these attacks on Gerald. I'm glad he's handling it the way he is, because to really seriously try to even articulate a comparison is an insult. And when I say an insult, when it comes down to providing for family, doing just the standard basic, there is no comparison. So the parodies are right on point. Just like with me, I'm not about to go video for video. This is a very significant opportunity to provide an example of ultimate mega hypocrisy. But then again, we know what's really happening. It's all about self-criticism, not criticism of others. So I'm not about to go back and forth, video for video. I'm simply pointing out this fact. It's not going to make any difference what Fingernails on the Chalkboard or Grownmold says or does with respect to me, unless there are legal lines crossed. But this is a situation that I wasn't going to let go based on how Grownmold and Fingernails on the Chalkboard run around here trying to perpetrate that they have a perfect situation. But we know what it's all about. It's about their resentment towards others who are just simply living life, doing the right thing by their families. And this is something they can't handle seeing with others. Instead of trying to improve themselves and take care of business, they want to put their energy into attacking people for doing what they should be doing. Again, it's their burden to carry. I'm certainly not going to jump on any situation where I'm in some sort of ridiculous, childish YouTube spat, which is what they always try to get going. And it always seems to boomerang back into their faces where it should be. because all they want to do is mess with folks and can't handle anything that comes back their way. And all of these empty threats are just that, empty threats. They only wished that we said the things and did the things that they did. Then they'd have a case. Otherwise, there's nothing. We're not even inclined to do what they do. We can address issues in a different way. It does not need to include what they do, hoping to get some sort of reaction so they can continue to speak on our name. Speak on our name. We're irrelevant, right? Speak on our name. We're insignificant. Speak on our name. And they are the ones following us around to all of these chats, trying to get these situations going. And we're just ignoring them for the most part. We're not binary. You're not holding us hostage. And I say we to any and everyone who supports me. We don't do hostage situations. You don't put us over any barrels. If and when we decide it's the appropriate time to take action and defend ourselves, we will. We're not following any fools, any demons, any freaks and backstabbers, those ingrate troublemaking, underbelly, low life, savage ass losers. We don't need any of that. But they continue to try to pursue us and talk to us and try to get us to engage them with all these fake names. They have nothing else productive to do. We're not going to be anybody's punching bag. We're not going to be a doormat. We're going to continue to defend ourselves how we see fit. It won't be in accordance with any demons giving us permission. We don't need your permission. We are going to act in our best interest, and we don't have any concern about what anyone else thinks about it. Let them continue leading each other where they always go. It ends up coming right back into their laps. Mission failed. Folks, you know I have more coming your way. In the meantime, you know the drill. Buyer beware.